I never thought one choice would change everything about who I am, but sometimes the life you imagine isn't the one you get. She wanted a husband, strong and steady, someone she could lean on, but what she created instead was me, someone caught between what I thought I was and what she seemed to mold me into. Even now, as I look back, I can't decide if it was all by accident or if Emma knew exactly what she was doing from the very beginning. My name is Daniel. I'm 32 years old, and if you met me on the street, you wouldn't think much about me. I'm the sort of man who disappears in a crowd, average height, a little too thin, not particularly commanding. People at work describe me as reliable, quiet, the one who always picks up the extra tasks no one else wants. That's how I've always been, someone who makes sure everything runs smoothly while others shine. I work in accounting at a mid-sized company, which probably fits me a little too well. Numbers don't care if you're bold or timid. They just need you to keep them in line. But when the workday ends and I walk through the door of the little townhouse Emma and I share, my life stops being just about numbers. That's where the story really begins. Emma is my girlfriend, though sometimes it feels strange to call her that because she carries herself with such confidence it makes me feel like I'm the younger one, even though we're the same age. She has dark brown hair that she always styles perfectly, a way of moving into a room that makes people notice her, and a sharp laugh that can disarm or unsettle you, depending on which side of it you're on. When we met 4 years ago, I thought she was out of my league. She worked in marketing, the kind of woman who could give a presentation in front of a boardroom and then laugh it off over cocktails with her coworkers. I was smitten from the start, though I never really understood what she saw in me. She used to say she wanted someone steady, someone not caught up in their own ego, someone she could trust. I tried to be all of those things. But Emma also wanted something else, and I didn't see it at first. She wanted a husband. Not just a partner, but a husband in the traditional sense. Someone who could be the strong one, who could take charge, who could be decisive and commanding in ways that I never really was. I tried, I really did. But no matter how much I tried to stand taller, to speak louder, to take control of situations, it never came naturally to me. She never said she was disappointed, not exactly, but I could feel it sometimes, in the way her eyes lingered when another man seemed effortlessly confident, or in the way her voice softened when she reminded me to be a little stronger about something. It was in those spaces between who I was and who she wanted that my secret began to grow. I had always felt a pull I couldn't explain. Even as a boy, I remembered watching my sister get ready for dances, watching her do her makeup in the mirror, the shimmer of lipstick, the sweep of mascara, the quiet magic of transformation. I'd felt an odd longing, not just curiosity but something deeper, like part of me belonged on the other side of that mirror. I never acted on it when I was young, too afraid of what it meant, but the feeling never disappeared. It stayed with me, buried beneath the responsibilities of work and adulthood, hidden even from Emma. The first time it happened was almost by accident. Emma had gone out for a weekend trip with her friends, and I was alone in the house. I don't know what pushed me to do it. Maybe the silence, maybe the curiosity that had never really gone away, but I found myself opening her closet. Her dresses hung neatly, each one a small piece of her life. I touched the fabric of a blue one I had seen her wear to dinner, soft and smooth under my fingers, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was slipping it over my head. The sensation startled me, the weight of it different from anything I was used to, the way the hem brushed against my legs. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, I froze. For a moment, I didn't see myself as I always had. I saw something else, someone softer, someone freer, someone who made sense of the feelings I'd carried for so long. It scared me as much as it thrilled me. My hands shook, and I tore the dress off quickly, stuffing it back into place before guilt could fully settle. For days afterward, I avoided thinking about it, but the memory lingered. It was like opening a door I hadn't known existed, and once it was open, it was impossible to close. Emma didn't know. Or, if she suspected, she never said anything. Our life together continued as normal dinners at the table, Netflix in the evenings, her gentle nudges about saving more for the future, her pointed questions about when I thought I'd be ready for marriage. I nodded and smiled, telling her we'd get there. But inside, I felt a storm building. The more she talked about marriage, about me being the husband she wanted, the more the secret part of me ached. Because the truth was, the more I explored that hidden side when I was alone, the more it felt like the real me, not just a passing curiosity. I began to experiment quietly. A little makeup at first, the way eyeliner sharpened my eyes, the way lipstick made me feel bold. I bought a few things of my own, hidden in the back of the closet, clothes Emma didn't know about. Each time I dressed, I told myself it was just a phase, just stress relief, but deep down I knew it was more. It was becoming harder to separate the man she wanted from the person I was discovering within myself. The introduction to my double life might have stayed hidden if not for the tension that built with Emma. She wanted a husband who could make decisions about houses, children, the future. I hesitated at every step. She wanted someone she could present proudly to her family as the picture of strength. I struggled to play that role. I thought if she knew the truth, if she knew what I did when she was away, she would leave me. That fear drove me deeper into secrecy, even as I felt myself slipping further from the man I thought I was supposed to be. Looking back now, I realized the suspense of being caught was part of the reason I couldn't stop. Every time I slipped into those clothes, every time I painted my lips or adjusted a wig I'd ordered online, there was a thrill in knowing Emma could come home at any moment. My heart would race at every sound, my hands trembling as I prepared excuses I hoped I'd never need. But it wasn't just fear. It was excitement, a rush that made me feel more alive than anything else in my quiet, careful life. I didn't know it yet, but those choices were leading me toward the night everything would change. The night Emma would stop looking at me as the man she thought she wanted and start seeing me as something else entirely. That night was still far off, but even in the beginning, the path was already laid. She wanted a husband, but what she created was a sissy, though neither of us could have spoken it aloud back then. I grew up in a small suburban town, the kind where everyone knew each other's business, but no one ever spoke about it directly. My parents were traditional people. My father worked long shifts at a factory and spoke little when he came home, and my mother kept the household in order with a kind of quiet discipline that left no space for rebellion. They loved me, I know they did, but they also expected me to follow a very narrow path. Be a man, get a job, find a wife, start a family. That was the script handed to me before I even knew who I wanted to be. But there were always cracks in that script. I remember being 7 years old and sneaking into my sister Lily's room while she was outside with friends. Her vanity table had fascinated me, the bottles of perfume, the little trays of makeup, the soft brushes. I would sit there, staring at myself in the mirror, wondering what it would feel like to put on just a little bit of lipstick, maybe some of her jewelry. Of course, I never dared, not with my parents around. My father especially would have seen it as a betrayal. He used to say things like, "A boy should be tough, not soft." Those words stuck to me like glue. I built my whole life around proving I was tough enough, even though inside I felt something entirely different. That need to appear strong carried into adulthood. At work, I forced myself to fit the mold of the dependable man, the one who never complained. I stayed late without asking for overtime. I volunteered to cover for coworkers. I blended into the background because blending in was safe. But blending in also meant I was invisible. Sometimes, during long nights at my desk, I would catch myself wondering if anyone would notice if I simply disappeared. That's the kind of quiet life I had before Emma entered it. Emma was different. She was fire where I was ash, laughter where I was silence. She noticed me, really noticed me, in a way that felt almost miraculous. She said she liked that I listened, that I wasn't like the arrogant men she usually dated. Being with her felt like being chosen, like maybe my softer edges weren't flaws but things she appreciated. And yet, slowly, it became clear that her idea of a long-term partner didn't entirely match the man she had fallen for. She wanted stability, yes, but she also wanted strength, decisiveness, a husband who could protect and provide without hesitation. It was in those moments when she hinted at what I lacked that the tension between who she wanted and who I was grew unbearable. I wanted to be her husband, but the more I tried to fit the role, the more it felt like a costume that didn't suit me. Ironically, it was in the literal costumes, the dresses, the makeup, the hidden shoes that I felt most at peace. I remember one night in particular, about 6 months after that first accidental dressing. Emma had gone to a networking event, one of those evenings where she would be gone late into the night. I sat on the couch, restless, the silence pressing in. My heart pounded as I went to the closet where I had hidden a small box. Inside were a few things I'd bought online: a simple black dress, a pair of stockings, a cheap wig that only vaguely matched my hair. I took them out slowly, almost reverently. As I dressed, the tension in my body melted away. Standing in front of the mirror, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in months. It was like I was finally seeing myself, the self I had buried under layers of expectation. But then headlights flashed outside. My body jolted, adrenaline surging. I tore off the dress, shoving everything back into the box, scrambling to change before Emma came through the door. I sat there pretending to read a book, my chest still heaving, when she finally walked in, humming to herself, tossing her bag onto the counter. She didn't notice anything, but I couldn't stop shaking. The risk of discovery made me feel alive in a way I hadn't expected. That mixture of peace and terror became addictive. I began to find excuses for alone time, moments when I knew Emma would be gone long enough for me to transform, to see myself again in that way. Sometimes I'd only manage a few minutes, sometimes an hour if I was lucky. Each time I promised myself it was the last, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Emma, meanwhile, grew more insistent about our future. She brought up marriage at dinner, teased me about being slow to commit, sometimes in front of friends. I laughed it off, but inside it made me feel smaller. She wanted a husband who could sweep her off her feet with a grand proposal. Instead, she had me, someone hiding makeup wipes in the bathroom cabinet and praying she never found them. I should have told her the truth. I should have trusted her. But fear is a powerful thing. Fear of losing her. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being exposed as something I didn't fully understand myself. So I stayed silent, and in that silence the secret grew heavier. The suspense of it all was unbearable at times. Every creak of the floorboards when I was dressed felt like a warning. Every text from Emma saying she was coming home early sent me into a frantic rush to erase any trace of what I had been doing. My heart lived in my throat, but I couldn't stop. It was like walking a tightrope with no net, thrilling and terrifying all at once. I didn't know it then, but those nights were shaping me into someone new. Emma thought she was waiting for me to become the husband she dreamed of, but in reality, she was unknowingly pushing me further into the identity I was beginning to embrace. Each day that passed, the line between Daniel the dutiful boyfriend and the softer self I discovered in secret blurred a little more. And the night she finally found out, well, that night would change everything. When I think about my childhood now, it feels like the story was always heading here, like every little moment was a step toward the person I would become. Back then, though, I only felt confusion. My father wanted me to play sports, to roughhouse with the other boys, to scrape my knees and come home proud of it. I tried, I really did, but I was terrible at baseball and even worse at football. I hated the noise of the locker room, the way the other boys laughed at my clumsiness, the way I never seemed to belong. I found excuses to spend time indoors, reading or sketching. My sister Lily used to tease me for being more interested in her magazines than in my own hobbies. She didn't know how right she was. One memory in particular clings to me like a ghost. I was 11, and Lily had left one of her dresses on the back of a chair. It was pink, with little flowers stitched along the hem. Something about it called to me. I waited until the house was quiet, then slipped it over my head. It was far too big, hanging loose on my shoulders, but in that moment, I felt a strange warmth spread through me. I looked at myself in the mirror, awkward and silly, but also right somehow. That was the first time I felt it, the pull that would return again and again. Of course, the moment was shattered when my mother called from the kitchen. I ripped the dress off, tossed it back where I found it, and answered her with a shaky voice. She never knew. No one did. That secret followed me through my teenage years. I buried it under layers of fear and shame, trying to convince myself it didn't matter. I threw myself into studying, into being the kind of son my parents wanted. By the time I reached college, I thought I had left it behind. But the truth is, you can't bury something that deep without it eventually finding a way out. Meeting Emma delayed that reckoning for a while. She swept into my life with such certainty that I thought maybe this was the answer. Maybe love would fix whatever I couldn't name in myself. She liked that I was quiet, that I wasn't like the men who tried to impress her with big gestures. But the more time we spent together, the more I realized she wanted those big gestures too. She wanted someone who could take her hand and lead without hesitation. She wanted someone who could be bold where I hesitated. At first, I told myself I could grow into that role. People change, after all. But no matter how many times I tried to be louder, stronger, more decisive, it never felt natural. It always felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit, stiff and uncomfortable. The irony wasn't lost on me that the clothes that truly fit were the ones I wore in secret. I remember another night, months before everything unraveled. Emma had left for a late meeting, and I stood in front of the mirror, wearing one of her skirts, a blouse I had bought myself, and the cheap wig I kept hidden. I was practicing walking, heels clicking softly against the floor. My heart raced with every step, terrified she would burst through the door, yet exhilarated all the same. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. Heading home in 20. Want me to pick up food? Panic exploded in me. 20 minutes. That was all I had. I tore the clothes, nearly tripping as I scrambled out of them, wiping away smudged lipstick in the bathroom sink. By the time she walked in with takeout containers, I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch television. She kissed me on the cheek, set the food down, and never noticed how hard I was still breathing. Those near misses piled up, each one leaving me shaken but unable to stop. It became a cycle I couldn't break: guilt, secrecy, release, and then guilt again. And all the while, Emma's talk of marriage grew louder. Her friends were getting engaged, planning weddings, posting pictures online of rings and celebrations. She would scroll through them, sighing, nudging me with comments like, "When's it going to be our turn, huh?" I would smile weakly, nodding, saying we'd get there soon. Inside, though, I wondered what kind of husband I could possibly be when half my life was lived in shadows. There were times when I almost confessed. We would be lying in bed, the room dim, her breathing slow beside me. I would turn toward her, words pressing against my lips. "Emma, there's something you don't know about me." But fear always silenced me. I pictured her face twisting in confusion, then disgust, then rejection. I couldn't risk it. Losing her felt like a greater terror than living a lie. Still, the weight of the secret was crushing me. Every time she looked at me with expectation in her eyes, I felt myself shrinking. She wanted a husband, but the more she asked for one, the less I felt like I could be that man. I was slipping further and further away from him, even if she couldn't see it yet. One Saturday morning, Emma was getting ready for brunch with her friends. She asked me to zip up the back of her dress, a red one that hugged her curves. I stood behind her, fingers trembling as I pulled the zipper up, the scent of her perfume filling the air. For a split second, I imagined myself in that dress, standing in front of the mirror. The thought was so strong it almost made me dizzy. I stepped back quickly, muttering something about needing coffee. Emma didn't notice. She just laughed and kissed my cheek before heading out the door. But I noticed. And the longing that surged inside me terrified me more than anything else. By then, I had collected a small wardrobe of my own hidden in boxes, tucked behind old winter coats in the closet. A pair of heels, a couple of dresses, some makeup carefully chosen to be subtle enough that I could wipe it off quickly. It wasn't much, but it was enough to create the illusion, enough to let me step into that other self when I needed to breathe. I didn't have a name for her yet, that part of me, but she was becoming more real with every passing day. The introduction to this life might sound small, like it could have ended at any moment if I had just stopped. But that's the thing about secrets, they grow roots. What started as curiosity became comfort, then necessity. And by the time Emma's questions about marriage became demands, my secret had already become too big to hide forever. And deep down, part of me wondered if I even wanted to hide it anymore. The days after her announcement spun into a blur that I could hardly process. Everywhere I went, I was no longer seen as her husband, but as something else, something she had shaped and displayed. The whispers in the neighborhood grew louder, my coworkers sent me strange messages, and even my family stopped answering calls. I tried to convince myself this was temporary, that if I just endured it, she would tire of the game and let me return to normal. But she didn't. Every morning she would stand over me with an outfit laid neatly on the bed, her eyes daring me to resist. Sometimes it was a delicate dress, sometimes a blouse with a skirt, sometimes lingerie that made me want to vanish into the walls. I told myself I had no choice, but part of me knew she was watching to see if I hesitated, and part of me feared what she'd do if I didn't obey. One night, I woke to find her on the phone, speaking in hushed tones in the kitchen. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard my name, heard her laugh softly, and then she said, "Don't worry, he won't back out now. He can't." My chest went cold.
Who was she talking to?
What had she promised? I wanted to march in, demand answers, but my legs felt like stone. Instead, I sat in the dark, shaking, pretending to be asleep when she returned. She slipped under the covers, draped an arm around me, and whispered, "You're perfect. Don't ruin it now." I didn't sleep at all that night. The next week, she started pushing me into public more. Grocery runs in skirts, dinners in dresses, strolls through the park where couples stared and snickered. I wanted to protest, but each time I opened my mouth, she silenced me with a look that carried both affection and threat. And I hated myself for how part of me leaned into the role, for how my reflection in store windows began to look less foreign, less like a costume.
I didn't want that.
I clung to the idea that I was still me, still her husband, but the line blurred more each day. Then came the invitation. A sleek envelope slipped under the door, my name printed on it in handwriting I didn't recognize. She found it before I did and smiled as she held it up. "It's time," she said softly. She wouldn't let me read it at first, only told me to prepare, that this was the night everything would change. When she finally placed it in my hands, my blood ran cold. It wasn't an invitation, it was a schedule. A time, a place, and instructions written so clearly there was no misunderstanding. Be ready at 7. Wear what she gives you. Do not resist. I confronted her, my voice shaking. "What is this?
Who sent it?
Why didn't you tell me?" She only smiled, brushing her fingers across my cheek. "Because you're not supposed to know. All you need to do is trust me." I wanted to scream, to run, but I froze. That evening, she laid out something different from anything before. It wasn't just clothes, it was a full look. Wig, heels, makeup arranged meticulously, perfume uncapped on the dresser. She guided me step by step, her hands firm and steady, her voice soothing.
"Breathe.
Don't fight it. This is who you are now." By the time she was done, I hardly recognized myself. My own eyes stared back at me from a face I couldn't claim as mine. I whispered, "Please don't make me go." She only kissed my forehead and said, "You'll thank me." We arrived at a house I didn't know, lights glowing warmly through curtained windows. Laughter spilled from inside, music faint in the background. She squeezed my hand and led me up the steps. My heart hammered so loudly, I thought it might burst. She knocked once, twice, and the door swung open. A woman I had never seen before stood there, her eyes flicking over me with a look that was both approval and possession. She smiled.
"So this is him," she said.
My wife nodded proudly. Before I could ask anything, I was ushered inside. Faces turned toward me, strangers, all of them, smiling, whispering, assessing. I felt trapped in a nightmare, the air thick and heavy. Someone took my arm and guided me forward as though I had no will of my own. My wife's voice rang out behind me, calm and certain. "He's ready. Do whatever you need." My knees nearly buckled. I spun around, desperate, searching her face for reassurance, but she didn't look at me like a husband anymore. She looked at me like property. My voice cracked. "Wait, what do you mean? What's happening?" And then the room fell silent. The woman who had opened the door stepped closer, her eyes sharp, her smile cold. She leaned in so close I could feel her breath on my ear. You still think you have a choice? The lights flickered. The music stopped. Every face in the room was watching me, expectant, waiting. My wife's hand rested gently on my back, pressing me forward. And in that moment, I realized whatever was about to happen, there was no going back. The door behind me clicked shut.